Okay, so we've covered the chromatic scale, we've covered the major scale and how that's created from intervals of tones and semitones, and then we've harmonised that scale, so we've got a series of set in stone chords that work together in a particular key. But you might be thinking, that's all well and good, they are the basic triads of major and minor, but what are all these other chords with extra numbers written on the end, like 7 and 9, 11 and 13 for instance? Well, if you go back over the video or the videos that I've spoken about in relation to how we built and harmonised those chords from the major scale, all we have to do is to carry on building. All we've got to do, if we take our first chord, which is for instance C major, and that's built up from the first note, that major third, and then that perfect fifth. What we do now is we carry on, and we carry on in the same way. So we skip over the 6 and we land on 7. And the interval, due to the fact where the tones and semitones are placed, gives that chord a major 7. So it's a major chord with a major 7 interval. And on the guitar, it sounds like this. This is the straight C major. Here's a C major 7. Here's a straight C major again. Here's the major 7. So it's you know it's still happy, but it's got a melancholy kind of edge to it. And this is where the extended chords come in, because primarily, you know, fundamentally they're still the same chord, but they just have a little bit more elegance to them. So we could keep building on that chord. So that was C major, and then C major 7. If you then jump over again from the B, you're actually jumping over the C, aren't you? And you're landing on effectively the second note again, but 7 notes higher, which is the 9th. So C, E, G, B, and then a D makes C major 9. So as we go through the next chord then, so that was C major 7 and beyond, the next chord, looking at D minor, and building on, using the same pattern of D, F, A, and then this time C. And that gives you a minor 7 chord. And minor 7s are kind of, here's a straight minor, and here's the minor 7. Again, it's just got that melancholy edge to it. It's very much a kind of smoky, jazzy blues kind of vibe to it, a minor 7. It's just a bit less harsh than the straight, austere minor. So if we carry on extending the chords of a major scale, we've got major 7, which can be written in a number of different ways. Then we've got minor 7. Then we get minor 7 again. Then we get major 7 at the 4th. And then this is where it gets interesting, really interesting, on the 5th. And so this is monstrously important, particularly if you're trying to understand jazz harmony. So, you know, pay attention to this bit. When you get to the 5th chord and you build onto that 7th, you'd be expecting it to be another major 7, wouldn't you? If you'd followed the same pattern, it's a major chord, it's going to be major 7. But because of the way the tones and semitones are laid out by the time you get to the 5th, the 7th note is sitting a tone behind that 5th chord. On all the other major 7s, it's a semitone behind, go and check. But on the 5th chord, because of the way the tones and semitones are laid out, that 7th note is a tone behind, and immediately changes the flavour of that chord. And that particular chord we call a dominant 7. And a dominant 7 sounds like this. Here's, for instance, G major. Here's the major 7, okay, and here's dominant 7. And this has been used throughout history, particularly, you know, that 5th chord being very powerful. It wants to pull everything back to the 1st chord. If I play this dominant 7th chord, imagine that's like a deep breath in, and then we resolve it. That's where it wants to go. So that's been used to great effect throughout history, musical history. Mozart was a master of taking you here, hitting you and you're expecting to go here, but he goes somewhere else. And he would build that tension and release throughout his pieces. And we've used it, you know, Western music has used it in a very special way for many years, and every type and style of music that has been created. So jazz, blues, you know, rock, swing, country, it's all been utilised, and the seventh is a very important chord. One of the key characteristics about a dominant seventh chord, and you can see there's a number of ways of writing it, but let's get used to seeing that. It's not a major seven, it is a dominant seventh chord. Is that it only appears once in a major scale. As you can see, there are 2 major sevens, there are 3 minor sevens, and it's a diminished, but there's only one dominant seven once you start to extend. So if you see a particular dominant seventh chord, you can put that at the 5th of a particular key and work your way around it to work out which key you're in. So for instance, if I saw G dominant 7, I would place G dominant 7 at the 5th in my mind of a particular key, and I might not know what that is yet, and then I would work through my tones and semitones and build the scale, and then underneath it then I would know which chords were in that key. So that's extending the chords, and like I said earlier, it carries on. So a C major 7 chord can become C major 9, a C major 11, C major 13, and same with the dominant chords, and same with the minor sevens. You just keep adding the notes on in that same step fashion throughout using the same scale. Sometimes you get what we call altered chords. So one particular note in the scale will take a step out. One particular note in the chord, should I say, will take a step out of it. So you might have seen a chord in the famous Hendrix chord, E7 sharp 9. And that basically is an E9, so they've taken an E at the 5th, built that chord to make a dominant 7, E dominant 7. They've added one more note in to make it 9, and now they're saying take that 9 and sharpen it, move it up by a semitone. There's the 9, and if I move it up by a semitone, that's E7 sharp 9. So a really good way of finding out what key you're in on the guitar is, if you find a dominant 7th chord, is to play the bass note of the dominant 7th chord on the A string. So we were looking at G7, weren't we? So if I find G on the A string, which is there, and I found that by utilising the chromatic scale, going from A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, working backwards from the A up here, A, G sharp, G, I know that that is the 5th of the particular key we're in, and 5ths on the guitar are power chords. So if you can play a power chord, you put your 3rd finger there, that's the 5th, there's the root. So that's the name, that's the note of the key we're in. And in this case, as you can see, there's E, there's D sharp, there's D, there's C sharp, there's C. 3, 4, 5, there's my G. So knowing the dominant 7 is really important, because, and understanding where it fits in a key, because I could look at a piece of music, perhaps on the real book, see a few chords, and then understand exactly what key I'm in. And that means I understand what scale I can play over that particular chord. So if you often wonder, you see people playing some crazy chord progressions, and you think, well, how do they know what to play over that? That's effectively what's ticking on in their minds, without them probably consciously thinking about it at that point, but at some point in their history they would have been looking at that. And whether it's their ears that have picked up on that, or whether they actually truly understand what's going on with the music, there needs to be some kind of understanding either way to get your head around it. So you might be thinking to yourself, right, that's great, but the more notes I build onto this chord, the more fingers I'm going to have to be able to play these notes. And you'd be right in some respects. And what we have to do as guitar players is compromise. Guitar playing is a series of compromises anyway, with tuning and all sorts, so get used to compromising a lot. If we were piano players, or in fact, if you're someone like TJ Helmrich, who just uses the guitar like a piano anyway, or Tal Farlow from back in the day, then you can do this kind of thing. But the best way to do it, and a lot of jazz players do this, is to omit some of the notes that are very similar to each other anyway as you extend the chord. So the first one to go is usually the fifth, and the perfect fifth, because it just sounds so much like the root of the chord anyway. So if I play C and then it's perfect fifth, there's C, there's the fifth. You know, they're so perfectly aligned, you don't miss that G in the chord. You're not going to miss it. So it means you've got an extra finger perhaps to fret another note or another extension. As always, I hope you found that of use. Just keep practicing, it will sink in, and if you already know it, I hope this is a useful reference guide. And I think one of the key things that I found is as you start to try and teach other people this stuff, it actually helps it to sink in yourself. So give that a try. Try actually verbalising it, talking with somebody about music theory, if you can find someone you can bore, and it might help your understanding of it grow and deepen. Till next time.